then you can smile naturally because the soul smiles all the time. That's an attribute of it. But when the soul becomes attached to matter, as we see in this worldly life, and we are engrossed in the vicissitudes, the happenings of matter, the paradoxes, it's difficult. It's difficult to be cheerful. You can do it, but when you realize the unity above this outward consciousness, you realize the soul, you realize your oneness with the infinite light of God, then you smile naturally. Then these other things do not have the sting which they do without that realization. We cannot blame people for not being cheerful as they look about. None of us blame them, I'm sure. But if you see the other side, realize the reality of the soul is one with the great light and love of God, and realize that this is but a dream. This outward consciousness is but a dream. Then you can smile without any regret, because you know the reality. And you know sooner or later, those people who are attached to the dream of life will break that dream, and they will be freed from the suffering of that dream, waking up in the great light and love of God. Having that, then you have true happiness, then your cheerfulness is natural, then, of course, that is the best, greatest antidote. So you see, cheerfulness coming from realization of our oneness with the great light and love of God is the best antidote for all ills, all troubles. Having that, remember, you have permanently removed the cause of not being cheerful. You be cheerful, things go your way, you feel good. The next day you feel terrible. Why? Because you haven't got that reality. You haven't got the realization that you need. And so we can say, cheerfulness. Cheerfulness, remember this. Cheerfulness, real, true cheerfulness depends upon wisdom through realization. You won't have it any other way. You may, perhaps, sporadically, at times be cheerful, but you'll never have it permanently until you acquire the wisdom of the soul, the natural smile of the soul through realization. That's an important fact. Now going on just a bit, avoiding the things which produce cynicism, grouchiness, and all those things that go with it. Suffering, pessimism. We can avoid those things by avoiding the bad habits of cynicism. Now, how do these habits come in upon us? You know some people who are permanently grouchy. They're always down in the mouth and everything is bad. Well, that comes from, those things happen because of certain reasons. There was a gentleman who used to come to my office, always said the same thing. Was a patient for many years. How are you this morning, Mr. Jones? Terrible. How are you? Next day. How are you? Awful. Oh, I feel terrible. I don't know what's going to happen. Always the same, perpetual grouch. Now, how to get rid of that? Or rather, how does that happen? Those things are brought over from previous tendencies. That's somewhat of an excuse. The next time you see a good grouch, remember that perhaps he can't help it, see? Or it is an inherited family tendency. You look at the parents, or one of the parents, or both, and you will see why the child falls into that habit of cynicism or grouchiness easily. So there you have two causes, but don't forget, another and important cause is that during this life, we practice bad habits that lead to frustration and complexes. Don't forget that also. It isn't always brought over, although that is a great contributing factor. It isn't always the fault of our parents or environment at home. Some families fight all the time. You go into their homes and they're battling all the time. Well, how can you be anything else but a grouch under those conditions? Other families have peace. And so these are the causes of cynicism. We should avoid those habits. By how? By replacing those things, as we read in the Imitation of Christ, by good habits. Nothing comes without effort. We must replace those things with good habits, habits which offset those things. And remember, the greatest thing to get out of these habits of grouchiness and cynicism is to contact God. That's the greatest thing. If you do that, you'll find that they cannot stay. They cannot exist when you feel the great love of God and see His infinite life. So never mind how bad your habits are of grouchiness, sourness. Find God through the techniques of self-realization. Merge in His life and His love, and they will fall off. What you worry about is getting busy to contact God. Remember, that's the greatest thing. But still, there are other things that we can do. We can replace these habits by good habits. When you really are awful grouchy and think, oh, I can never get out of this, I guess I'm a perpetual grouch. Remember the time perhaps when you were ill and you thought, will I ever get over this sickness? Look back and you remember the time when you were well. Now there was a time, perhaps you don't remember it, when you were peaceful, cheerful, and happy. So, do not put the barrier up that you can never get over it. Do some positive thing. The greatest positive thing to bring about cheerfulness is to do regularly. Discipline yourself by proper meditation to contact God. And I tell